Much like princess tales with their wicked stepmothers, Catherine Orleans, the biological daughter of Viscount John Orleans, watches as Laura, her father's mistress, gives herself completely to the lustful count and plays around with her younger brother. All of these scandals are absurd rumors associated with her. It has been 10 years since her stepmother became the wife of Viscount Orleans. Since then, she has experienced explicit discrimination and a cold shoulder from Laura, along with her half-sister Anne. Even her father, who had initially attempted to mediate between them, eventually saw her as a nuisance. Unlike her half-sister, Catherine didn't want much. She was content with her tattered bedroom curtains and her worn-out shoes. However, she is just a normal person who has limits. It has been 2 years since she started enduring all the harassment for the sake of her late mother. But this time, she no longer feels the need to do that. She is now tired of everything. One day, Laura reprimands her yet again for not following her stepmother's instructions, criticizing her for not learning to remain standing while a guest is present. At this point, Catherine doesn't care anymore. Moreover, the guest is merely her fiancé, Charlos Killholder, who's having an affair with her half-sister. In fact, Anne interrupts her when she hears about her plans to leave the castle. Tearfully, she assures Catherine that the rumors about her aren't true, which is particularly shameless considering she was the one who went to great lengths to spread those rumors in the first place. I can't stand the audacity of this two-faced girl! Meanwhile, Laura thinks Catherine's rumors won't be resolved even if she leaves. However, she has had enough with her noisy stepmother, brainless fiancé, and her two-faced half-sister. Until the very end, she is disappointed in them. Eventually, she decides to go up and pack her things. To think, she has only a single carrier, even after she has packed everything. As Catherine is leaving, Laura chases after her, scolding her relentlessly. For the first time in her life, she confronts her stepmother. She realizes that if she had known how easy it was to speak her mind, she would have done it much sooner. Meanwhile, when Charlos tries to stop her, she slaps him before he can utter a word. Momentarily, she asks Anne to relay a message to their mother. Catherine's only request is that they don't look for her if they wish to live in peace, as she plans to do the same. With that, she cuts ties with her family for good. Honestly, I would do the same thing. Now that she has finally left the castle, everything feels perfect. The sun feels like a blessing from above, offering her a refreshing sensation she hasn't experienced in years. Leaving Orleans is Catherine's top priority, but now she has to figure out a proper destination. Looking at the map, it seems as though the village takes up only a handful of land. Shortly, she realizes how she has suffocated on such a small piece of land for so long. After enduring for several years, she must now pave the way for her own life. Eventually, Catherine decides to head to the most prosperous region in the eastern part of the empire. She instructs her carriage driver to take her to the Christopher Duchy, where she will begin her new life. Upon arriving at the listed property that Catherine is looking for, she looks at the house in awe. The reason why she initially chose Christopher Duchy as her new home is quite straightforward. She chose this simply because it has a territory that excels in all fields, such as finance, culture, and the arts. Moreover, it is a land long safeguarded by the Archmage due to its vibrant populace. Previously, Catherine had to spend lots of money and time to get out of Orleans. She even wasted some more due to a sudden change in destination. She left the Orleans name behind and went by her mother's maiden name, Panya. Surprisingly, she threw away her old bank account under Catherine Orleans. Because of this, the coachman pitied her and took care of her situation, so she was able to avoid a crisis. Then, good news arrived while she was living off selling her belongings. It had been about a month since she started living at a motel. It was her lucky day as she had found a good property near the outskirts. Now she is visiting the property that she previously found. The house is really big compared to the price. Indeed, the mansion is the largest residential building in the northern part of Christopher's territory. Moreover, the view is nice and the port is close by. It's a great place to look at the ocean. Then why is it so cheap though? No matter how much Catherine thinks about it, there is no way a building like this will be for sale at this price without anything in return. She tries to find a problem, but the realtor assures her that everything is fine. However, she remains unconvinced, sensing a significant issue that he is hesitant to disclose. With that, she decides to nullify the contract. She doesn't trust her, so viewing it is enough. After all, there are too many aspects that don't align with her desires. As a result, she resolves to look for a suitable house in the vicinity. Momentarily, the realtor tells her everything truthfully. Frankly, the mansion has a ghost living in it in the basement. During the full moon, there are screams and noises of a girl crying. Regardless of whether the rumors are true or not, within 2 years, 4 contracts have been canceled. After finding out the truth, Catherine decides to sign the contract, which surprises the realtor. Admittedly, she has no friends, so she's been lonely lately. After hearing about the ghosts, at least she won't be bored. The mansion suits her well. Later that night, she immediately stays in the mansion and decides to start cleaning. Although she's glad that she has a new home now, it's too dirty and there's a lot of cleaning to do. By the way, there are also a lot of rooms in the house. Momentarily, Catherine reminds herself to be patient. She's in heaven compared to Orleans anyway. Later on, she goes down to the basement to search for candles, knowing it will be some time before the electricity is connected. Despite remembering the tales of ghosts in the basement, she remains unfazed. Upon opening the door, she discovers something unexpected. Oh no, I hope it's not something dangerous. Catherine finds it unusual that there's a light coming from the basement of an empty house. Once inside, she notices a magic circle on the floor. Rather than being alarmed, she simply views it as a mess and begins to clean it up. Momentarily, a random man with a cape appears out of nowhere and starts investigating her by asking questions. His appearance seems unrealistic since he has distorted violet pupils and skin as white as porcelain. Despite being creeped out by his sudden appearance, Catherine instructs him to clean up the mess on the floor. She is now quite irritated by his intrusion into her space. Meanwhile, the man thinks that she's being too obvious by acting clueless, doubting her true intentions for being in the mansion. Fortunately, his mood today is not too bad, so he decides to spare her life if she speaks obediently. Shortly after, Catherine recalls her mother's warning to never go near an outside wizard. With that, she realizes that the man is a wizard. He proceeds to question her intentions, clearly misunderstanding the situation. However, she refuses to show fear and responds coldly. Contrary to him, her mood is stale, with her only goal being to clean up the large mess on the floor. She then tells him to quit making himself at home in someone else's house and either leave or help her clean up this mess. Moreover, she threatens to report him for intruding or attempted murder. That's right, girl. Show him who's the boss and stand your ground. With that being said, Catherine shows him the contract as proof that she is the owner of the estate. This means that the land, building, basement, and even the sky are her properties. This takes the man by surprise. Upon realizing that she's the owner of this place, he immediately apologizes for unsettling her. He then decides to put an end to their unpleasant interaction right away. Before he leaves, Catherine asks him to leave the light behind since she doesn't have a candle. From that day forward, everything proceeded relatively peacefully. The biggest worry is the magic circle in the basement, which eventually stopped glowing and seemingly finished its duty. Thanks to that, she's able to focus all her attention on cleaning the estate. Since the place is so huge, it took her days to clean everything. Now she is enjoying a rare period of rest that she was unable to have before. Indeed, nothing compares to enjoying some alone time as she relishes her cup of tea. However, this peace is disrupted when the man returns and interrupts her. What is he doing in her place again? Upon arriving at Catherine's house, the man interrogates her once again. He asks if she hears any strange or frightening noises at night, and if she has experienced any unusual auditory hallucinations or felt the mansion shaking. Luckily, she hasn't encountered any of the occurrences he mentioned during her time in the mansion, including nightmares. Earlier, when she was boiling water for tea, the man suddenly appeared. Despite her asking when, where, and how he came inside, he just sat down without responding. Now he continues to ask nothing but weird questions. Since he's bothering her so much, he suggests she consider buying another mansion. However, Catherine doesn't wish to move out. Although she was also previously warned by the real estate agent about the ghost in the mansion, she still bought it. There haven't been any problems for her anyway. Unlike their first meeting, the man gives off a high-class aura of nobility this time. For some reason, it's hard for her to look him in the eyes. Shortly after, she insists that he leave after questioning her, warning him that she will report him for trespassing if he doesn't comply right away. However, he hesitates over her request, but eventually decides to conclude their interaction for the day, asserting his authority, which upsets her. In the end, she chooses to let him go this time, but firmly reminds him that there won't be a next time. Before he leaves, he hands her 100 lei as payment for the tea. Surprisingly, this amount of money can hire 6 housemaids for a whole month. It has been 5 days since the man left the money for Catherine. Today, she decides to go to the market and buy ingredients for stew with her own money. Soon after, she notices a crowd gathering around the notice board. Upon closer inspection, she realizes that Grand Duke Cesare, who has returned after a 2-year imperial mission, bears a striking resemblance to the man who trespassed into her house. Funny how she thinks that the intruder is much better looking than the Duke, though. Momentarily, Mel Forbace, the head of security for Northern Christopher, approaches her. He then initiates a conversation about the Duke's mission, which is to bring the evil dragon Guarsharop to justice. The Guarsharop is the owner of the southern mountains of the Empire, and Duke Cesare is the only magician exceptional enough to rival the Imperial Highness. However, no matter how evil the dragon may be, it was no match. Furthermore, the Duke is credited with ensuring the citizens' freedom to travel safely at night in Christopher. He has the capability of stopping the vicious dragon alone, which burned a small kingdom in the southern part of the Empire and swallowed the whole royal family. Shortly after, Catherine realizes that she was previously trying to get the Duke to wipe the floors of her basement, which makes her guilty. If only she had known that he's the Duke, she would have suppressed her anger and let him off gently. Afterward, she returns to her house and feeds the kitten she found in the garden. While talking to the kitten, a large beast suddenly crashes into her house, finding the intruder inside as well. What in the world is happening now? As the huge monster attempts to attack the intruder, he successfully brings it down in the end. Shortly after, Catherine approaches the man as she screams in fear. He tries to calm her down after showing the monster goat's head, assuring her that everything is fine now. The moment she wails about the painstaking effort she put into cleaning the house, everything miraculously returns to its pristine state. Now, the house is back to how it was before without a single scratch. With that, the intruder's magic reminds her of the great magician, Duke Cesare. Despite bearing a resemblance to him, he firmly denies being the Duke when she questions him about it. However, Catherine refuses to believe him. One thing she's certain of is that there's nothing good about being associated with this man. Thus, she returns his money and firmly requests that he never return to her house again. Meanwhile, the man cannot believe that she remains in this mansion even after all the chaos. He even suggests using the money to buy a new house, but she has no intention of leaving her place. Shortly, he warns her that if she dies, she won't be able to open her mouth, let alone report him. His true identity begins to reveal itself as his ominous aura resurfaces. As Catherine's mother once warned, individuals with immense magical powers can be identified by the color of their eyes. Among these, purple eyes are considered the most dangerous, making it crucial for her to be careful around this intruder. As she witnessed earlier, there are hideous, non-humanoid monsters who desire this mansion, particularly the land it stands upon. To reiterate, anything can happen at any time, like what happened today. In the future, it could be Catherine's life at stake rather than just the mansion. This warning advice is the intruder's best attempt to persuade her, providing more money to make her reconsider her choices. After his last words, he suddenly disappears, leaving 1,000 leis behind. It probably means he wants her to stop bothering him and just leave. Now that Catherine knows the true identity of this man, she doesn't know what kind of miserable situation she will be in if she keeps persisting. While cleaning the library, she eventually decides to leave the mansion. Oh my gosh, finally she's seeing the light! Shortly after, she discovers a portrait of her mother under the bookshelf. Overcome with emotion, she reflects on the time they spent together as the happiest period of her life. Catherine's mother meant everything to her. When she was with her, it felt like the entire world was hers, and she never feared anything. It has been 10 years since her mother went missing. She resented her for leaving her alone, but missed her unceasingly at the same time. Interestingly, the portrait of her mother remains in pristine condition, as if it were recently painted. This suggests her mother is still alive. Catherine then wonders why her mother's portrait is in this mansion and what connection she has to this place. Even now, after settling in with Christopher with much difficulty, a part of her heart still deeply misses her mother. Discovering evidence of her mother's presence in the mansion rekindles her hope that there may be more traces of her somewhere in the house. However, if another incident like the previous one occurs, Catherine can find herself in danger, as the intruder warned. Despite this, she ultimately decides to stay in the mansion until she finds more of her mother's traces. Nah, girl, I say get out of there quickly! 4 days have passed since the incident, and Catherine continues to find more traces of her mother. Along with Rose, the first maid she hired in the mansion, they keep looking at every corner of the property. The maid found most of the hidden things around the house. As expected from an old mansion, there are many secluded locations and unknown objects. One night, Rose nervously approaches Catherine in her room, indicating that the ghosts are making their presence known to her. She's scared to be alone. That's why she restrains her boss from going outside her room. However, Catherine reassures her that everything is fine, stating that this is her home and no one is allowed to enter without her permission. Moreover, she can't just sit back and watch things like this happen. Upon inspecting the house, she hears nothing except the sound of rain. When she goes to check the basement, she discovers the intruder outside her home, drenched in the rain. Catherine immediately approaches him, but he suddenly faints. She then brings him inside and warms him up. What is he even doing there in the first place? Shortly after, something darker than shadows unexpectedly appears and initiates a negotiation with her. This dark entity has appeared on and off since she was a child, to the point where she has almost forgotten about it. Now, she confronts it with determination, forcefully ejecting it. Her assertive words have a powerful effect, causing them to vanish afterward. Oh no, I'm pretty sure that thing wants the man. Afterward, Catherine drifts off to sleep on the couch, her mind filled with thoughts. Later that night, the intruder discovers her asleep and quietly carries her into her bedroom. Catherine awakens from a dream in which her mother learns about her husband's affair. In the dream, her mother instructs her younger self on how to punish wrongdoers, recalling an incident where she disciplined a maid involved with her husband. Shortly after, she wonders how she ended up in her bedroom. In the hallway, she discovers the intruder standing by the window. He then reveals that the Imperial Knights are gathered outside her house. Additionally, he's implying the possibility that they might harm her. Catherine perceives them as no different from him, invading her home and ruining her peaceful life. As she proceeds to get a shovel for self-defense against the Imperial Knights, the intruder quickly intervenes. Soon after, the two knights arrive at her door and declare that she must perish according to orders. Before they can move, the intruder swiftly attacks them, confronting them for intruding on Catherine. The knights quickly apologize, explaining that they're simply carrying out orders from the Emperor. Taken aback by Duke Caesari's unexpected appearance in the mansion, he clarifies that he's visiting his lover and they have disrupted all of their enjoyment. Meanwhile, Catherine reluctantly goes along with his actions, despite disliking them, because she sees them as potentially beneficial to her. So the intruder is really the Duke, huh? The knights apologize for interrupting the Duke's time with his lover and then depart. Shortly after, he explains to her that this is his way of repaying the debt for rescuing him from nearly freezing to death. Later on, Catherine expresses gratitude to him for his assistance and intends to return his money. However, he declines and instead takes one of her books. She is surprised as he leans in close while taking the book, leaving her reluctantly agreeing with whatever he says. OMG, look at her blushing! When her maid informs her that Percival is passing by downtown after he fights and subdues a demon, she is shocked. She knows that Percival Benedict Painlehin comes from a royal family and is perceived as a hero of the Vatican. Catherine also thinks that he is such a sweet gentleman, which she assumes is a characteristic of a Marquess's family. She also perceived him as a crazy dog, reminding her of the time they were still together. She had been in love before, but she knew she couldn't be with him anymore. She also bet that Percival doesn't remember her at all. While she's walking with her cat, she looks at the garden and sees Damien complaining about being the one who has to pull out the weeds. However, she thinks it is still a way to save money by not hiring a gardener. When she pets the cat, she suddenly remembers that she's going to visit her mother and rushes to Cesare to get the painting of her mother. When she gets to Cesare's room, she immediately mops the magic circle to bring him back and get what she's looking for. After she meticulously mops the floor, he appears behind her. She immediately begs him to give back the book he borrowed. Cesare takes her hand, and in a blink of an eye, she is at his house. She immediately recognizes the place as belonging to Grand Duke Christopher. While she is deep in thought, Cesare calls her and hands over the book she's looking for. She feels a sense of relief when she still sees the picture of a lady. She asks Cesare who she is, but he doesn't know either and explains that she is someone she is looking for. On the other hand, Glenn comes into the room and tells Cesare that it is about the return of the paladins of the Vatican. Cesare is instantly furious about the paladins' behavior. Catherine concludes that he has a bad relationship with the Vatican. As Catherine decides to return to her mansion, her worry about Damien's garden antics become apparent. Her concern for the garden's order is almost endearing, and her reaction when she holds Cesare's hand reveals a delicate, fluttering emotion that hints at a deeper connection. He also advises that memorizing the title of her book is practical. Her reaction when she holds Cesare's hand is unexpectedly tender. There's clearly more to their relationship than meets the eye. However, Catherine's response takes the interaction to a whole new level. Her innocent yet daring question about how to call him when she needs him shocks Cesare, as if she's begging for her lover to stay. Despite her question, Cesare still asks if she truly needs him. He is concerned that Damien might run off during the night and do something to her, which she realizes means she can't keep erasing the magic circle to call him. He then hands her a key, telling her to use it if she needs him in times of danger. Back in her mansion, she continues to ponder how to use and keep the key safe. While she thinks about it, Rose rushes to her and informs her that the paladins of the Vatican are outside the mansion. Rose explains that the Vatican believes their house is a breeding ground for demons. Upon hearing this, she considers calling Cesare, but realizes she can't keep depending on him. She starts to devise a plan, including the possibility of Percival being among them. Looking around, she spots a bag. She grabs it and heads outside, using it to mask her identity. Meanwhile, Damien confronts the paladins, and their conversation grows intense. Shortly after, Catherine calls him, surprising him by using a bag as a mask to hide her identity. She asks what's going on, and he explains that Mel and the others are causing the commotion. You're too funny, Catherine. Brown bag as a mask? Mel discusses the magic circle in her basement and purifies the energy in the area. Catherine suspects these individuals are from the subjugation and have returned with Percival. She keeps the key in hand in case something happens. Meanwhile, another paladin notices the cat and deems it an evil follower. Catherine pretends Mel brought the cat, but Mel informs Carlos it's just an ordinary cat. When Damien can't stand Carlos's arrogance, their conversation escalates. Damien grabs Carlos by the hair, only for it to fall out. It was a wig! The cat laughs at Carlos, which makes Catherine wonder if Carlos is telling the truth. How can a cat laugh? Isn't it suspicious? As Carlos tries to harm the cat, Percival arrives and scolds him for making a fuss over something as trivial as a cat. He pats Carlos on the head and suggests they return to the hotel because he's hungry. However, Percival's attention shifts to Catherine since she somehow feels familiar. He corners her against a tree and asks for her name. Catherine recalls the alias she gave him and says, "Goat poop." Afterward, he walks away, warning her to be extra careful around Carlos. As he leaves, she thinks he's forgotten about her, but she soon realizes she's wrong. The next day, Rose and Catherine go to the market. Rose expresses a desire to see the paladin, so Catherine decides to leave her to enjoy her exploration. Moreover, the cat that Carlos perceives as the devil is kept at the mansion, and Mel doesn't care if the cat is truly disguised as a devil. Catherine remembered that a person must have contact with the devil for him to become the mage. While she's walking, the paladins of the Vatican arrive at the market. There, she sees Percival. She remembers the time they planned to run away, but she didn't show up. Catherine looks at Percival amidst the crowd, but when their eyes meet, she is shocked and unsure what to do. She starts running faster, and Percival chases after her. She hides against the wall of a building, but her surprise deepens when Damien suddenly grabs her. "You can't be running all your life, Catherine! You must face him!" Catherine asks Damien what he's doing, and he explains that he was supposed to buy herbicide, but the store owner left him to watch a procession. He notices Percival following her and assumes he's her secret lover. Damien adds that Percival is engaged to a very beautiful woman, who turns out to be Catherine herself. Catherine asks Damien if Percival is in love with the woman, and Damien confirms it. He questions why it matters to her and if Percival has harmed her in any way. Unwilling to discuss it, Catherine insists they return to the mansion. Shortly after, Catherine and Damien return to the mansion with the herbicide they bought. When Catherine asks for the newspaper and enters her room, she is shocked to find Cesare there, reading the very newspaper she was looking for. She asks what he's doing at the mansion. He replies that he's checking if nothing happened. Catherine assumes he's referring to her, but he clarifies that nothing happened at the mansion. She reassures him that everything is fine, though Rose might find things difficult for a while. Cesare recalls how Rose had been hearing a lot of noise recently, which magically ceased when she moved into the room next to his, leading Catherine to speculate it might be due to the circle in the basement. Their conversation is interrupted by a loud noise, which Cesare predicts is from one of the paladins. Catherine rushes to the window and sees Percival. She realizes he went to great lengths to follow her. Facing Percival, he immediately suggests that her voice might be why it sounds familiar to him, but he insists there's no way he could have found her, calling himself a fool for even thinking he might. He walks towards her and asks why she didn't go that day, to which she replies that she didn't want to meet him, leaving Percival shocked. Catherine added that she's not the only one who didn't come to the place they should have met. Percival didn't show up either. She expresses that she can't go along with his foolishness anymore and emphasizes that she doesn't have any lingering feelings for him. He can't believe the changes in her behavior and realizes how foolish he was to follow her to her mansion. Despite the tension between them, he advises her to move from the mansion she's staying in and promises to come back to find her again. He leaves while she remains standing there, shocked. She snaps back to reality when Cesare calls her name and teases her about wanting Percival to turn back. She asks Cesare to assure her that Percival won't return, and she reflects that she should have kicked him out a while ago. When she's about to take a rest, a loud noise makes her rush to the hallway. It was a horse that she perceived as a monster. She needs to get rid of it before Rose and Damien see it. Without hesitation, she uses the key to open one of the doors at the mansion, and she is brought to Cesare's office and finds him there. When Catherine arrives, Cesare asks what she's doing early in the morning. She urgently tells him that she needs his help, explaining anxiously that there's a monster inside her mansion. Cesare calms her down and wraps a vest around her to keep her warm. He explains to her that she already has the key and tells her she doesn't need to look for him anymore. Catherine apologizes and explains herself, but Cesare brushes it off and asks if she always wears the key around her neck. Returning to the mansion, they find the monster surprisingly dead. Catherine wonders who killed it, only to discover it was Damien. Damien asks if Catherine is all right, and she looks for Rose, learning that she's at the market. Damien explains that parts of the mansion and garden were destroyed. Catherine expresses gratitude for Damien's swordsmanship and thanks Cesare as well. Cesare, however, extends Damien's punishment for neglecting the mansion while focusing on the garden. Despite the damage, peace returns to the mansion, and Catherine no longer worries about Damien because Cesare is the one paying him. While reading the newspaper, she comes across an article about a monster that also invaded the streets, but she isn't sure if it's the same one from the mansion. Rose calls her name and asks her to lead the guest to the living room. Catherine is not expecting any guests, so Rose explains that the guest is the lady's younger sister. The woman standing in front of the mansion is Maggie. She states that it was hard for her to come all the way to the mansion and demands tea. However, Catherine promptly asks her to get straight to the point and explain her intention for coming to the mansion. Instead of answering the question, she behaves childishly. Maggie then informs Catherine that their sister Anne is getting married to an old man, Count Chen. Catherine is surprised by the news and can't believe Anne, who has always had too much pride, is getting married. Maggie also adds that the old man has given everything to Anne, including a country. Whoa, talk about flexing one's wealth. They both know how Anne goes crazy over money and easily falls for the old man's act. After sharing the hottest news about Anne's wedding, Maggie hands over the invitation she stole and gives it to Catherine. Maggie then decides to rest, asking Catherine to wake her up before dinner, but she falls asleep before finishing her sentence. Watching her sister sleep, Catherine can't help but feel strange seeing her family again after leaving Orleans. Meanwhile, while Catherine is reading the newspaper, Cesare comes to her room and says he wants to discuss something with her. Catherine can't understand why she has so many guests. Cesare asks for her Imperial bank account details for Damien's salary. However, she suggests paying the salary in cash, but Cesare doesn't trust this method since the mansion has been experiencing frequent accidents. Shortly after, Maggie wakes up and rushes over to Catherine, saying she's already hungry. Cesare realizes that Catherine has a guest, and she introduces her sister to him. Maggie mistakenly thinks he's the Grand Duke, but he corrects her and introduces himself. However, Maggie still can't get over the fact that the Grand Duke and Cesare seem to have similarities. The atmosphere feels intense and weird between the two, which Catherine observes. However, Maggie quickly let go of his hands when they shook hands, saying that she had a friend to meet. Before she leaves, she tells Catherine to visit her anytime. After Maggie leaves, Catherine apologizes for her sister's behavior, which Cesare completely understands. Catherine worries that Maggie might be sick and continues to think about her. Cesare returns to the topic of Damien's salary. Before discussing further, he advises Catherine to close her eyes for a while. When she opens her eyes again, Catherine finds herself in a very cold room. She goes downstairs and finds Rose lying on the floor. In the garden, she sees Damien, unsure if he's sleeping or dead. Confused and surprised, she is startled when the cat appears behind her when she hears that magic doesn't affect her. Wait, is the cat actually the demon inside the mansion? Catherine asks Kitty if she cast a spell under the mansion, but the cat denies it. The cat explains that she came to the mansion only to check on Catherine's well-being, and finds Catherine's offensive accusations hurtful. Kitty also mentions the terrifying and strong power of the man with silver hair, surprising Catherine. Kitty adds that Catherine should consider how she treats someone like him, especially since she receives protection from him. She begins by revealing her immunity to magic, and learns Cesare's true identity right away. When Kitty hears this, it promptly decides to depart. When Kitty leaves, she begins to ponder about Cesare's magic. Before he notices that she's the only one who's doing fine, she immediately rushes over to Perception's hall, but she stops when she notices that the basement is open. Catherine is unable to lock the door in time before a bloodied man begging for help begins crawling up the stairs. Shocked, she watches in disbelief as Cesare approaches her. He begins to explain that he understood why she couldn't use magic. It was due to magic nullification. This is making my head spin. She realizes with dismay that her trait has been carelessly exposed. Cesare points out that her ability to nullify magic indicates she has completed her magical education. He then asks about the color of her eyes, which reminds Catherine of her mother's words, that people with magical powers can be identified by the color of their eyes. Noting their pretty purple hue, Cesare confirms her devilish lineage. For generations, the Ite Reina royals have valued magic like a vital limb. Yet, despite this, devils are still subjected to subjugation. Resigned to her fate, she accepts it, understanding Cesare's secret, but is surprised when he dispels the spell at the mansion. Right after Cesare breaks the spell, she calmly remarks that if it's her turn to die, she feels nothing. Reflecting on the days they used to drink tea together, she finds herself drawn closer to him once again. She wonders if friends truly capture the depth of what they've shared in those moments. Despite this, he offers his hand to help her up and admits he's been foolish this time, acknowledging that she deserves some praise. As he prepares to leave, she gathers the courage to ask him if he intends to kill her or feed her to the monster in the basement. Cesare reassures her that as long as she keeps his identity hidden, she won't come to harm. However, Cesare expresses deep-seated mistrust towards promises made by humans, emphasizing that she must prove she's not an enemy. In a cryptic manner, he suggests that if she seeks answers, she should consult with her younger sister. Cesare further reveals that the trash she disposed of today belonged to her sister, adding another layer of intrigue to their conversation. Whoa, Cesare's outright distrust of humans is intense. While sipping tea and looking out the window, Catherine can't help but recall Cesare's words. She also realizes Maggie is late for her visit. She plans to speak directly to her sister about Cesare's words. After a while, Maggie arrives excitedly and apologizes to Catherine for being late because she has moved from a different hotel. She is glad for her sister's visit, but still finds it suspicious. Maggie first asks about the Grand Duke's presence at Catherine's mansion and whether they're together. Catherine quickly urges Maggie to lower her voice, worried that he might overhear. Despite Catherine's caution, Maggie, disappointed by her response, excitedly declares she now has a reason to ruin Anne's wedding. Realizing she might not get another chance to steer the conversation, Catherine bravely says that she has something important to discuss and will get straight to the point. Catherine fiercely asks her sister the reason for her visit and how she knows where she lives. In response, Maggie explains that she intended to tell her yesterday but couldn't because of the Grand Duke's presence. Maggie is acting kinda sus. Maggie also mentions that it was because of Anne, and she seems furious. She angrily speculates that Anne might be feeding their mother nonsense stories. Maggie reveals that their mother is trying to marry her off to an old man for gold. Catherine isn't surprised by this revelation, knowing their stepmother's tendency to exploit both of them for money. Moreover, Maggie claims that she turned their house upside down and stormed out, losing any family support. To her surprise, Catherine asks where she'd been staying. Maggie replies that she's been working at the Imperial Palace and has no idea it was her sister's residence. Upon hearing this, Catherine is confused about what Maggie is doing there and how she can manage around the men at the palace. She recalls Cesare's warning to be cautious of the Imperial Palace and of Maggie, fearing she might end up back at her own mansion. Maggie excitedly shares that she has defended Catherine against Anne and their mother many times, to which Catherine expresses her gratitude. Listening to Maggie's stories, Catherine realizes that Maggie doesn't know the full story and has been acting based on what she was told. Despite everything, they are still family and would never intentionally harm one another. When evening comes, Catherine feels a pang of sadness while looking at her mother's portrait. She reflects on not getting enough information from Maggie and feels stuck in her current situation. She thinks about how she can't afford to die, unable to live her life and gain freedom. This leads her to consider making a contract with the devil, although she realizes that other methods of obtaining freedom might conflict with Imperial law. Holding the key Cesare gave her, she unlocks one of the doors in her mansion and finds herself in his office, filled with determination to live a good life. Cesare stops reading and looks at her, acknowledging that he gave her time to think about it. He reassures her that she's all right with it and mentions that if she comes up with a better idea, he'll be willing to help. Catherine exclaims that she's already made up her mind to make a contract with Cesare. However, before proceeding, he has something important to tell her. He explains that merely making a contract with the devil wouldn't bring salvation. Instead, she could achieve salvation by living a memory from her past life through reincarnation. Cesare also warns Catherine about the suffering she would endure if she went through with the contract, sensing her apprehension. He gently holds her hand, guiding her to sit and offering peppermint tea, her favorite. He explains he knew her preference because she drank it every time. As they enjoy their tea, Catherine discusses the possibilities of reincarnation into different forms, whether a different human life, a plant, or an animal. Cesare patiently answers her questions about what it would mean to be reincarnated into something else. During their conversation, Catherine begins to realize Cesare is actually a kind-hearted person. She appreciates how thoughtful he is in reminding her of the implications of making a pact with the devil. Despite her reservations, she feels comforted knowing it is Cesare she'll be making the contract with. Once more, Catherine affirms her decision to make the contract with Cesare, expressing her certainty and suggesting they live together for the rest of their lives. Her bold declaration leaves Cesare momentarily speechless. In a surprising move, he pulls her closer and kisses her. Wah! Is the devil finally falling in love with a human? Catherine wakes up feeling dizzy, but why is she in her room? It's certainly not the last place that she remembers. Suddenly, she hears someone talking. It's Cesare. He is telling her that with the contract that they have established, they have now exchanged a part of their souls with each other. That's the reason why she'll be feeling dizzy for a while. But then, with the kiss that happened earlier, Catherine asks him if that was really needed to exchange their souls. Cesare's taken aback. He laughs while explaining to her that it's a convention between devils that has been passed down from generation to generation. Whoops, we may have gotten ahead of ourselves. Catherine grumpily complains that he should at least ask her the next time. Just because they're in a contract doesn't mean that the relationship is close enough for them to kiss. Cesare agrees and proceeds to explain to her that for the contract to be completely established, they need to fulfill 3 conditions, including the soul exchange. Since he already owned her soul, the second thing that he'll do is to grant her something that she desperately wished for. Cesare stands up and walks closer to her as he carefully grabs his blanket and helps tuck her to sleep. He gently looks into her eyes, saying that she has 2 days to decide what her wish will be. If they fulfill all of those conditions, she'll belong to him forever, and their relationship will be deeper than blood. Hearing that, Catherine sits again, asking him why he calls Maggie by her first name, but he calls Catherine by her last name. Well, isn't it Catherine who asks him to call her Maggie? Still, it seems like it doesn't sit right with her. Isn't their relationship now deeper than blood? He should also call her by her first name, right? Cesare decides that if that's what she wants, then he'll do it. Catherine is too stubborn, leaving him no choice but to look at her and call her Catherine. Those simple words light up Catherine's face as she radiates happiness with the smile that she's giving him right now. Sitting on the sofa, Catherine remembers the paper that Maggie gave to her. She was told to try dipping it on the water, and when she did, letters showed up. Before she can even try to read it, she hears someone behind her reading it. It's Cesare. She smiles at him and unconsciously thanks him. Suddenly, she realizes, since when did she even get there? He suddenly gets the paper from her. After he knows that it's from Maggie, he realizes what's been happening. Since Maggie's boss, the Crown Prince Saffron, and him aren't on good terms, he warns Catherine to watch out because they'll bother her somehow. But Catherine still wonders why they aren't on good terms. Is it because they are rivals in love or something? Cesare states that she almost got it right. It's because of love, since the prince is in love with him. After that chit-chat, she stands up and excuses herself since she still has to help Damien in the garden. Cesare's surprised that they're still not finished with it. Well, Damien is too laid back. She also doesn't have enough money to hire a professional gardener, so she really has to help. Cesare looks at her and asks her why not ask for money as her second wish. That intrigued her right away, that's right. That's what she needs. She has to ask for a practical wish, money enough to fund her entire life. Relatable. After all, money makes the whole world go round. Now that she has fulfilled 2 conditions, the last condition to establish the contract is to know the real name of the devil. But since their names have power, she has to be really careful with saying it out loud. She looks at him and asks for his name, and his real name is Leviathan. The moment she hears that name, she instantly feels an intense power as if it would cut her skin. Now that the contract is established, no one will treat her badly if they know that he is her master. On their way to grant the second wish, Cesare suddenly brings her to his house. He didn't even listen to her when he said she'd change her clothes first. While roaming around waiting for Cesare, she sees a group of people. She thinks that they're his workers, but they are the cardinals from the Vatican. The cardinals suddenly walk close to her and call her a demon. She tries to explain, but they don't listen. Cesare arrives and tells him that she is his guest, but they are telling him that his mind is being corrupted by the demon. He tries to calmly ask them to leave his mansion, but to no avail. With this situation, Catherine thinks that she'll be fine as long as Cesare is with her. She's even more worried about her getting hungry. She looks at Cesare, asking what they'll have for breakfast, but the moment she looks at him, he seems so serious. Suddenly, the cardinals pull a relic of the 7th divine seal, Hamael, and perform a divine seal. A magic circle appears on the floor. She then feels a hint of dizziness, and also her feet feel so hot. She looks at Cesare and asks if that magic hurts innocent people. But Cesare thinks that there's no way. The divine seal is only effective against demons and monsters. He asks her to bear with it even if she finds it bothersome, because if she runs away, she'll be branded as a demon and become a target of the Grand Duke's subjugation. Catherine looks at him, and there's a hint of panic in her eyes. She wants to bear it, but she feels as if her souls are burning. The moment he hears that, he instantly casts a spell to get rid of the divine seal. Suddenly, a demon appears, which surprises the cardinals. He declares that they committed a crime for using magic on their land, and suddenly, the demon gets them and leaves. When they arrive at Catherine's house, Cesare immediately asks how her feet are and apologizes for what happened. But she assures him that it's okay and that the whole situation is out of control. He really didn't expect that they would suspect her as a demon. It's probably because of the abyss. It is, but it's the passage that connects the human world and the fiery pit of demons, also called the demon summoning circles. There's one in this mansion. He asks her to stay away from them. She is close to Devil, so she should not be getting along with humans. Catherine lets out a small laugh while touching the back of his neck, telling Cesare to not worry. Her mom, who told her that, already passed away. Cesare is in shock. Suddenly, he casts out a spell and a flower appears on his hands. Kneeling on the ground, he gives her the flower, telling her to sleep with it. Then she can dream whatever she wants, like meeting her mother again. That flower will live for as long as she lives. It is impossible that he feels nothing for her at this point. He also gave her an invitation letter to the banquet, as he held her hand and kissed it while asking her not to reject him. Bro definitely likes her. That night, she's staring at the mirror when suddenly the cat calls out her name from the window. He yells at her, saying that he waited for her all day. It feels as if he's dying from starvation. She immediately carries him and promises him to buy all the food that he wants with the money that Cesare gave her. Then, she realizes she still hasn't opened the bag that she got from Cesare. She immediately opens it, but instead of cash, she sees a pile of bank checks approved by the Imperial Bank. Half of it is backed by the Queen's Bank. It can even be used in countries where Imperial banknotes are not accepted. Suddenly, the cat asks about the paper with a weird print on it. She opens it, and it's an invitation to the banquet. A luxurious cruise party exclusive ticket to the finest furniture exhibition on a luxury liner. She has to be there. They offer luxury furniture brands, and now it's her duty to fill up the house with furniture using Cesare's money. Sitting on her bed while busy compiling the budget for the cruise, the cat suddenly tells her that Cesare has been waiting for her in the living room. She hurriedly walks towards the living room, only to find Cesare looking extremely amazing in his suit while reading the newspaper. The banquet is in 3 hours, and she still has no dress to wear. She can't go to the dress shop since she doesn't have enough time. Cesare already knows that this is going to happen. That's why he brought her maids. The maids already know what to do, guiding Catherine toward her room and getting her all dolled up. Standing by the carriage, Damien is begging Cesare to just leave him behind to trim the garden and promises to finish it within a week. Suddenly, Catherine arrives, telling Damien that he won't be able to do it in a week, knowing how laid back he is. Cesare's eyes widen the moment he looked at her. As expected, he was right. Shades of green really do look good on her. Oh no, Cesare, you were whipped. While sitting in the carriage, Catherine wonders if they'd be late, but Cesare's pretty sure it won't happen. Sure enough, in 10 minutes, they arrive in the harbor. Catherine is amazed by how huge the ship Lilith is. She is looking at the surroundings while Cesare excused himself to check something. She walks towards Damien, who is carrying the cat. He looks all tensed up, but who wouldn't when they're bringing a demon cat? Catherine assures him that it will all be okay, and the cat agrees too, unless a human who's allergic to demons appears. Suddenly, a guy sneezes in front of them and mumbles what if a demon is around. He looks at Catherine and apologizes. She asks what he is saying, and the guy replies that he's allergic to demons. Soon, they're making their way to the ship, and she and Cesare seem to be catching a lot of attention. She looks at him and asks for a favor to change her appearance while they're aboard. It worries her that they might receive unnecessary attention that might make things uncomfortable for him too. He laughs, finding her words funny for some reason. He comes closer, saying that he believes no one in the world can make her and him uncomfortable, as he holds her hand and gives Catherine a sweet smile, assuring her that there's nothing to worry about. She then can't hide her excitement. The piercing sound of the horn, the smell of the sea, the receding harbor, the people waving, and Cesare standing by her side as if it were only natural. Everything excites her. Truly, signing a contract with him was the right decision. Looking in the mirror, she doesn't even look like herself anymore. All because of the potion that she asked for. She asks him if she can also do that if she learns magic. Well, Cesare thinks that magic is a science that both requires talent and effort, but if her magic affinity is good, she might be able to learn magic if she tries. But she doesn't even need to try though, because she has him. He can do everything with his magic. When the trip is over, he can teach her how to tame the demon. All of a sudden, he puts a necklace around her neck. It's a royal pendant. Cesare thinks that it's better to give her that than cash, since it's something that is only given to someone whose status has been guaranteed and who owns private property by the Imperial Bank. Everything can be done with this pendant alone, even if you don't have cash or jewelry. In simple words, it's a portable bank check. Catherine couldn't be even more grateful to have it. She never thought that day would come that she'd own a royal pendant. She faces Cesare, who's about to leave, and asks what to tell people when they ask what their relationship is. He looks at her and tells her that she can say whatever she wants. She can be his everything. Girl, how can you be so dense? Looking at the sunset and feeling the wind, she's amazed by how nice the feeling is. She can't help but talk to her cat who's inside her bag when all of a sudden, a young man talks to her. He completely thought that she was talking to him, but quickly realized that she wasn't the moment he saw the look on her face. Catherine gets annoyed, wondering why it matters if she's talking to herself. She also called out how the man talks to her informally. The man seems taken aback and just laughs awkwardly. Well, he thought she was talking to him informally first, so he thought they might know each other. He immediately apologizes for offending her. Catherine's about to leave when the man suddenly asks her about the secrets surrounding her birth. She looks at him confused by what he said, but then he hands her a business card telling her that people like them can recognize each other. Later on, Damien immediately approaches her, worried that she left without him. If something happened to her, he wouldn't know how to face Cesare. Out of the blue, she asks him to tell her something about himself, in which he shares that he's an illegitimate child of Prince Chevok. Damien didn't have an easy life either. He shared stories that he hadn't told before, and there was also something that painted her. Suddenly, Cesare arrives to escort her to the party, in which she meets a lot of people, but there is one person that she didn't expect to see. Percival. Dancing in the middle of the crowd, Catherine hopes that Percival won't see her. She's doing this hoping that she won't attract his attention, but it seems like she's become the center of attention. The moment they finish dancing, Cesare kisses her hands and looks at her intently, telling her that he'll see her tonight. On their way to the room, Damien asks her how her relationship with Cesare started, when the Cesare that he knew is a very cold-hearted person who didn't know anything about romance. The only thing that she replies is that Cesare isn't a cold-hearted person. Besides, there's no use denying their relationship. Damien won't believe her anyway. She remembers seeing Percival and asks Damien why that person is here. It turns out that Percival's older brother is the owner of the ship, and most people that are here are from the Vatican. It's as if they walked straight into a lion's den. All of a sudden, someone calls Damien. Those are two Imperial Knights. They are mocking Damien for being someone's bodyguard. Damien tries to brush it off and escorts Catherine to her room, but then the guy shouts at them saying that Damien is selling his own body. They are infuriated by what they heard, but before they can even go to them, someone already punched the guy. It is Heliana of the First Imperial Order. Catherine introduces herself to her and opens up about how bad she feels about what they've been saying about her bodyguard, and that she'll tell all of these to his grace. She tries showing her royal pendant, which shocks Heliana. The knight tries to argue again, but Heliana punches him once more, forcing him to apologize. Lying on her bed, Catherine realizes that since the beginning of her trip, lots of weird things have happened, but she's still thankful that she has Cesare. Well, she still wonders what he meant by seeing him at night, though, but she didn't overthink it and took a nap instead. She opens her eyes. She wonders where she is. She's certainly not in the boat, and why is she seeing a dolphin? It feels as if she's being cradled by it, and it hits her. She's in the ocean. She feels strange, but then suddenly the dolphin talks to her, and that's when she realizes that it's Cesare, and he summons her to his dream. It turns out that she became a dolphin too. As they are swimming in the ocean, Cesare shares to her that he hears about what happened, and that he's proud that Catherine is using the gift that he gave her for a good deed. But the whole reason why he summoned her is to teach her magic. A hint of excitement flashes on her face, but sadly, he can't teach her now because it's time for her to wake up. Damien is exhausted. He didn't know that shopping can be exhausting. All he wants from Catherine is a nice, comfortable bed. Suddenly, Catherine stops when she sees a nice bed set. She walks towards it and plans to buy it when all of a sudden a man also says that he wants it. It's the strange man from yesterday, the one who wants to scam her. They argue about who will buy it as she sarcastically asks him if his mother owns the bed when suddenly the time stops and everyone in the room freezes. The man laughs, thinking that he asked her a similar question yesterday. He looks at her and asks if she ever thought that there might be a secret to her birth that she never knew. Suddenly, the man stands on the bed with his knife and a dark shadow appears and forms as an enraged woman. The woman infuriated the man, but he just explained that it is time for her to make a pact with someone since the time was already coming. It turns out the woman is a Nephilim. Half human, half demon. If she doesn't make a pact by the time comes, she will be uncontrollable. The woman looks at Catherine and walks towards her, offering her to make a pact with her, not with Giovanni. So that's the name of the man, Giovanni. Catherine looks at the man, but he's nowhere to be found. It seems like she's trapped by this woman. She looks down, hoping that Cesare will appear, when suddenly someone appears in front of her. All she can see is the person's back, but she knows who it is. It's Cesare. He's always to the rescue. Best boy. The woman thanked Catherine for saving her life. That's because earlier, Cesare asked Catherine if they should spare her life or not, in which Catherine told him to spare her. It is a kind act, but it can also be a danger for them if that Nephilim goes crazy. While sitting in the room, the woman can't express how thankful she is for Catherine and promises to protect her until they exit Lilith. While talking, a business card falls. It's Giovanni's business card. Giovanni Busperfiel still can't believe that he's that man. Busperfiel is an armed organization that fights for the human rights and freedoms of Nephilims. She asks the woman if she knows Giovanni, and a sudden shift of emotion is seen on her face. She tells Catherine to run away the moment she sees him. He's the type of guy who commits murder to achieve his goals. Later on, the moment Catherine sleeps, she is once again summoned to Cesare's dream, but this time, they're seals. Throughout the dream, Catherine discovers why she wasn't able to do magic when she was little. Unlike most humans who can find their roots in fire, water, lightning, darkness, light, and wind, the root of her magic is transference. It's a root that doesn't manifest in humans, only in demons, but she isn't a demon because if she was, she wouldn't have made a pact with Cesare. Knowing all of that, Catherine is a bit disappointed since she has been waiting for that day. But then Cesare pats her, telling her not to be so disappointed since she is rushing it all up, knowing that transference is so powerful. It'll be so dangerous. It is the same when the death of a Nephilim is referred to as a calamity. When they can't control their power, they can hurt people around them. He doesn't want that to happen to her. He holds her hand and asks her to keep her roots a secret between the two of them because there are zealots among the sorcerers and they might dissect her alive. The next morning, Catherine is eager to start her morning nicely. Not until the moment she gets out of her room and the very first person she sees is her ex, Percival. We'll stop here for today, guys. Yes, I know you want more. Don't forget to ask for the next part in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching and for your support. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Till the next one.